The walls of Kensington Palace trembled today as a sealed DNA test shattered everything Prince William and Princess Catherine thought they knew. The results confirmed what Princess Diana had hidden for decades. A secret so powerful, it brought the future king and queen to tears. Behind closed doors, betrayal, heartbreak, and Diana's final truth spilled into the light. The monarchy may survive the scandal, but the question remains, how do you rebuild trust once it's been erased by blood? The letter that shook Kensington. The morning began like any other inside Kensington Palace, just after 8:07 a.m. when Princess Catherine walked into the private drawing room carrying her usual stack of correspondence. But one envelope halted her breath instantly. It was stark white, sealed with deep burgundy wax, and carried no crest, no initials, no royal markings. Only her name, handwritten in unfamiliar script. Catherine rarely opened private letters alone, yet something about this one demanded immediate attention. When she broke the seal, an icy feeling rushed through her chest. Inside lay a confidential DNA report stamped Archived 1995, and a fragile piece of paper bearing handwriting she would have recognized anywhere. Diana Spencer's. The DNA report listed two names, Diana, Princess of Wales, and a male whose identity had been blacked out in thick ink. But the numbers were unmistakable. A 99.97% match. A parent-child link so definitive it erased any possibility of error. Catherine blinked, reread, blinked again, her hand tightened until the parchment crinkled, her pulse thundering. Diana had commissioned this test on 12 March 1995, exactly 211 days before her car crash. The timeline hit Catherine like a blow. Why had Diana ordered such a test? Why had it been hidden for 30 years? And why now, had it arrived at Catherine's doorstep? The second sheet of paper was even worse. Diana's handwriting, elegant yet hurried, read, "If this reaches you, the truth could not stay buried. Protect my sons. Protect him." Those last four words stabbed through Catherine's composure. Her eyes blurred as she traced the ink with her thumb. The implication was monstrous. Diana had a secret child, another son, unknown to the world, erased from the record, hidden by forces powerful enough to bury DNA results for decades. Catherine pressed her palm over her mouth, fighting rising nausea. She felt the room tilt around her, felt the weight of the monarchy pressing onto her shoulders like a stone. Her tears dropped onto the page, smearing Diana's ink slightly. Catherine understood immediately, knowing this would change everything. William, Harry, the line of succession, the monarchy's credibility, nothing would survive untouched. Catherine pulled the heavy velvet drapes closed and locked the door, her breath unsteady. She felt she was holding a ghost, a warning, and a ticking bomb all at once. And in that moment, she realized something terrifying. She was now the keeper of a truth that had the power to shatter the House of Windsor forever. Catherine held the documents tightly against her chest, her mind racing through Diana's past, her warnings, her fears, her coded messages left behind like breadcrumbs. This wasn't an isolated discovery. It felt like the final piece of a puzzle Diana had been trying to reveal since 1987. Catherine's instincts told her this was not the beginning of a scandal, but the final crack in a secret that had been waiting to explode for decades, and to understand it, she needed to retrace Diana's footsteps. Diana's warnings were real. Catherine's thoughts drifted back to her visit to Althorp 2 years earlier, on July 1st, 2023, when she viewed Diana's archived journals for a private exhibition marking what would have been Diana's 62nd birthday. At the time, one line had puzzled her. One day, she will know. Catherine assumed Diana meant future historians, or perhaps a future daughter-in-law. But seeing the DNA report now, the meaning sharpened like a blade. The diaries were full of cryptic hints, references to the machine, to secrets locked behind marble doors, and to fears that he will be taken from me. Catherine remembered shivering when she first read those entries. Now she understood why. In one journal, dated February 1988, Diana wrote to a confidant named only as M. Some truths are too dangerous to speak aloud. They would tear apart the dynasty they worship more than human life. Catherine had dismissed the line as emotional metaphor, but another letter from 1991 described a shadow child, a phrase Catherine assumed referenced public scrutiny of William and Harry. Today, that phrase carried an entirely new meaning, one that made Catherine's stomach twist. Diana had been warning someone, anyone, of a truth she feared would be erased. The same truth Catherine now held in her trembling hands. Catherine also recalled hush-hush conversations with King Charles over the years, subtle remarks about the past being complicated, or Diana's choices being misunderstood. At the time, she accepted them as reflections of the bitter separation between Charles and Diana. But one moment now haunted her. During a holiday gathering in Sandringham, Charles had said, "Some things from that era were better left buried." He'd said it casually, almost wistfully, but Catherine now heard the fear beneath it. Buried, hidden, suppressed. The same words Diana had written, words that suddenly aligned too neatly to be coincidence. As memory and reality collided, Catherine's breath quickened. Diana wasn't being dramatic. She wasn't paranoid. She wasn't emotional. She was leaving a map, one Catherine had unknowingly begun to follow the day she married William. A map leading to a truth the monarchy had spent 3 decades burying. Catherine pressed her trembling hands to her forehead. She knew she couldn't ignore what she had found. Diana's warnings were real, and the clock had begun ticking the moment Catherine opened that envelope. If Diana had left clues, Catherine knew exactly where the trail would lead next. Althorpe. The estate, steeped in silence and memory, had always been more than a burial site. It held the last untouched pieces of Diana's life, a sanctuary from palace control. And somewhere within its walls, Catherine felt certain, lay the answers Diana intended her to discover. The secret beneath Althorpe. Catherine arrived quietly at Althorpe Estate 2 days later, under the guise of needing respite from London's pressures. It was 6:42 p.m. on a rain-slicked Thursday when the wrought iron gates closed behind her. Only one person greeted her, Mrs. Layton, an elderly housekeeper who had worked there since 1984 and who had adored Diana with fierce loyalty. Without hesitation, she said, "Ma'am, she left something for you. She told me there would come a day." Catherine felt her heart pound. Diana had planned this. She had predicted this moment. Mrs. Layton led her into the Old West Wing, a section sealed off after 1997 and rarely entered since. The air felt untouched, preserved, almost frozen in time. After unlocking a heavy door, the housekeeper revealed a hidden archive room filled with stacks of boxes, old trunks, and files marked private. In the corner, 3 small boxes sat apart, tied with blue ribbon. Catherine gasped. Each bore Diana's unmistakable handwriting. "For Catherine, when the time is right." The dates on them ranged from 1989 to 1996. Catherine's knees weakened as she knelt before them. Inside the first box were dozens of letters documenting Diana's attempts to investigate her own past. Meeting times, coded names, travel records. One envelope contained photocopies of hospital records from 1986, partially redacted. Another letter described quiet trips beyond palace eyes, referring to times when Diana vanished from royal schedules for medical appointments that had nothing to do with her own health. The second box held photos, grainy, private images capturing Diana with a young man whose identity had been blurred or partially cut from public prints. But in these originals, he stood beside her, and his resemblance to Harry was unmistakable. The third box carried the most devastating contents. A single folder labeled DNA contained the original commission requests, dated March 1995, along with Diana's notes. One page read, "If anything happens to me, he must know who he is. If they hide him, someone must uncover him." Beneath it lay a letter addressed directly to Catherine, sealed but never sent. Catherine's hands shook as she opened it. Diana wrote, "You will love my boys, and when you find the truth, you must choose courage over silence. This secret is not for the crown. It is for my sons." Catherine closed her eyes, tears streaking her face. The weight of the boxes, the words, the photos, the decades of hidden truth, everything collapsed onto her. At once, Diana hadn't been unstable. She hadn't been imagining enemies. She had been fighting a silent war the world never saw. And now Catherine was staring at the evidence. Evidence she could no longer ignore. The secret beneath Althorp was real, documented, intentional. Diana had a hidden child, and Catherine was the one chosen to reveal him. The man in Diana's shadows. Catherine sat for hours in Althorp's archive room, surrounded by Diana's memories and truths too long buried. Among the items in the second box were a series of photos dated between 1986 and 1990, each with a figure beside Diana, a tall young man close in age to William, with striking red-brown hair and features hauntingly similar to Prince Harry. One photo, dated March 1988, showed Diana walking hand-in-hand with him in Aix-en-Provence. Far from royal eyes, Catherine stared. This wasn't coincidence. This was deliberate. Several letters referred to the man as N, a code name Diana used in personal writings. Diana noted trips to Zurich, Lisbon, and Cornwall, all listed in her official schedule as rest or charity engagements. But Catherine now understood they were cover for secret meetings. N was described as bright, artistic, and quietly royal, with one letter saying, "He carries Charles in the cheekbones, but none of the cold." One entry from October 1989 mentioned Diana staying in a cottage near Loch Lomond, where N had his first birthday with her. When Catherine cross-checked official birth registries from that time, the man's details were erased. Redacted entries, missing baptism records, and missing hospital files from St. Mary's Hospital between 1986 and 1987 told their own story. A palace insider later confirmed to her that some documents had been pulled by special request on orders from Clarence House in the early 90s. This child had been erased, systematically, efficiently, and without trace. And yet, here he was, fully alive in Diana's words and images. The final clue came from a folded document tucked into Diana's diary. A sketch of the young man in adulthood, drawn by Diana herself. What if he grows up with no one? She had written in the margins, "Will he forgive me for staying silent?" Catherine clutched the paper as the truth dawned like a slow storm. This was Diana's unfinished legacy, a living heir, a son in exile. And Catherine now bore the unbearable knowledge of who he was, and how close he had come to being forgotten forever. With trembling hands, Catherine packed the boxes for return to Kensington, her heart heavy with every step. But one task remained. Charles had to be confronted. The time for secrecy was over. Diana had hidden her son in fear. Catherine now faced a choice: continue the silence or demand accountability. Her path was clear. That night, under the fading gaslight of Clarence House, Catherine requested a private audience with King Charles III, a confrontation 30 years in the making. The confrontation with Charles. Catherine arrived at Clarence House at 9:20 p.m., the air thick with tension and October mist curling through the palace gates. Charles waited in the maple room, flanked by old portraits of monarchs long dead. He looked tired, almost fragile, as she entered with a satchel bearing Diana's letters and the DNA report. She placed the stack on the table silently. Without speaking, she slid the test across the table. His eyes narrowed as he read, his hand gripping the edge of the desk. Charles's initial response was cold. "These are old papers. You've been misled." Catherine didn't flinch. Instead, she read aloud Diana's 1995 letter, her plea for protection, her fears, her instructions. Charles said nothing for a long while. Then his voice cracked. "She made me promise. After the crash, it was decided. For the good of the crown." The words stunned Catherine. "You erased a child," she whispered. "You made the monarchy clean by making Diana dirty." He didn't deny it. The full confession came slowly. Charles admitted that after Diana's death in 1997, a secret agreement was reached within the Privy Council, including 2 bishops, a royal secretary, and Camilla. The child, now a man, was placed under private guardianship, educated abroad, and forbidden from using his surname. It was the only way, Charles said. There would have been chaos. Catherine stood, shaking. "There already is chaos. You just postponed it for 28 years." The man they erased had grown up, and now the truth was impossible to contain. Catherine's voice turned sharp. "You buried Diana's truth to save your reign, but I won't be part of the cover-up." Charles said nothing more. As she walked out, she glanced once at Queen Mary's crown sitting in the glass case, a relic of tradition, now eclipsed by betrayal. That night, Catherine returned to Kensington not as a wife or duchess, but as a woman burning with clarity. She knew William had to hear it next, and the world would soon follow. The truth Catherine carried now weighed too much for silence. But before the public could know, William had to. That night, after tucking George, Charlotte, and Louis into bed, she walked into their private sitting room and locked the door. William looked up, sensing something was wrong. What unfolded in the next hour would break his heart, strip away decades of illusion, and leave him confronting the impossible. His mother's secret son and the brother he never knew he had. William's tears and reckoning. William listened without a word as Catherine laid everything on the table: the DNA test, Diana's letters, the photographs, and the confession from his father just hours earlier. At first, his face was unreadable. "A brother?" he asked flatly. Catherine nodded. "And not just any brother, one they hid, one Diana tried to protect. William's breath faltered. He picked up a photo dated 1988, Diana on a bench with a boy whose smile mirrored his own. He stared for a long time, then whispered, "I knew there was more to her absences." The silence stretched. Finally, William covered his face and broke down. The man who had served in the RAF, stood tall at his mother's funeral at 15, and held the nation's hopes in his hands, was now just a son mourning the cruelty done to his mother, and a brother mourning the years lost. "She told me once," he said, "that not all truths can be spoken inside these walls. I thought she meant her affair, but she meant him." Catherine sat beside him, hand on his back. William wept, not just for the secret, but for the cost. "They stole him from us," he said bitterly. "From me, from Harry, from her." He remembered moments when Diana had left suddenly, her eyes red when she returned, pieces that hadn't made sense now locked perfectly into place. And worse, he now saw his own complicity. Years spent upholding an institution that buried its own blood. "How do I face the public, knowing this?" Catherine spoke softly. "You do what your mother asked. You protect the truth. You bring him home." William wiped his tears and nodded. "Then we don't wait. The world must know." For a moment, neither of them spoke. They simply held each other in the candlelit room, the portrait of Diana above them glowing softly. The monarchy would never be the same. But for William, the next step was not about crowns or titles. It was about justice. For Diana, for a lost brother, for truth. Camilla's threatening calm. The next day, before William or Catherine could make a move, Camilla arrived at Kensington Palace, unannounced, and flanked by two senior aides. It was 11:15 a.m. The children were at school, and Catherine was alone in the green salon. Camilla entered like a duchess on a chessboard, smiling politely, but with steel behind her eyes. "I heard you've been revisiting old ghosts," she said, settling into a velvet chair as if it were her throne. Catherine offered no pleasantries. She simply placed Diana's final letter on the table between them. Camilla picked it up, her fingers barely twitching. "She always loved a bit of drama," she muttered. Then, more softly, "I knew about the child, we all did, but I made sure he'd never return. I had to." Catherine felt a chill spread down her arms. Camilla's calm was not ignorance. It was strategy. She admitted that during the Privy Council meeting in 1997, she had supported the decision to hide the child's existence, fearing public outrage would destroy any future she had with Charles. Her voice was silky, but every word struck like glass. "Let me be very clear," she said. "If you bring this out, the monarchy burns. Not just Charles, you, William, your children, your Middleton name. It all becomes fair game. The tabloids will dig into your parents, your sister, your marriage." She paused. "And I can't guarantee they won't find cracks." Catherine's breath tightened, but she didn't look away. Camilla leaned in, almost tender. "Think before you crown a ghost. The living suffer far more than the dead." After a long silence, Catherine stood. "This isn't about crowns. It's about children. Diana's and mine. And I won't let yours rewrite history any longer." Camilla's expression flickered, the mask slipping for a split second. Then she left, silent and poised. But Catherine knew. The war for the truth had just gone public. The gloves were off. And Camilla, once the side character of Diana's tragedy, had now become its coldest antagonist. That evening, Catherine and William stood before a row of microphones, not under palace orders, but by personal resolve. Camilla had threatened them with scandal, but Diana's voice echoed louder. With trembling hands and unwavering eyes, Catherine prepared to speak, not as a future queen, but as a woman defending another. The press were already whispering by 6:05 p.m. the world would hear what had been hidden since 1986. No handlers, no edits. Just truth, and the crown bracing for its greatest storm. Chant's defiant decision. The announcement took place in a small chamber near Kensington Gardens, chosen deliberately to feel personal, not regal. There were no golden thrones or velvet drapes, just a plain white podium, a wooden lectern, and Catherine, dressed simply in gray, with Diana's pearl bracelet on her wrist. The press had been summoned under short notice. By 6:07 p.m., the room was full, the cameras rolling, and Catherine began. "I speak today not as Her Royal Highness, but as a daughter-in-law, a mother, and a woman entrusted with the memory of Princess Diana." She then held up the DNA report, the letter, and a photo of Diana with the unnamed young man. Her voice broke only once. Princess Diana had a third child, a son, hidden not by choice but by fear, by power, and by a system that could not bear imperfection. She read Diana's final letter aloud. "If you've found this, let the truth breathe." And then Catherine looked directly at the cameras. "Today, we let it breathe." The media storm exploded within seconds. Journalists shouted questions. Flashbulbs lit her face. But Catherine stood still, breathing deeply. She ended with words that shook the room. "The crown must be a symbol of truth, not silence. We owe this to Diana, and to the brother we never knew we had." Behind the curtain, William waited with his hand over his heart. The moment was both historic and haunting. Catherine had made her choice and pulled the entire monarchy into the light. Hours later, had Diana's son trended globally. News outlets from London to Lagos, from New York to New Delhi, ran headlines. "Windsor scandal explodes. Kate breaks palace silence," and "Hidden heir revealed." At Buckingham Palace, aides scrambled. Charles reportedly locked himself in the Lancaster room. Camilla cancelled her charity appearance in Wiltshire. And across the nation, crowds began to gather at Kensington Palace, laying flowers beneath the gates once again, not in mourning, but in vindication. As the truth spread across continents, one question surged above all. Where is he? The man Diana had shielded. The brother William never knew the son whose birth had been erased. For 37 years, he had lived outside royal circles, unknown to the public. But now, under the weight of his mother's name and the fire of Catherine's revelation, he was about to step forward. And in doing so, he would rewrite everything the crown had built on silence. A nation reacts to the hidden heir. Within 24 hours, a man appeared at the gates of Kensington Palace, escorted only by a single aide and 2 unmarked vehicles. He was 37 years old, tall, with a calm intensity in his features. The resemblance was undeniable. His nose mirrored Diana's. His smile held Harry's softness. His eyes, a piercing blue, seemed etched from history itself. Cameras zoomed in, reporters gasped, and the nation exhaled. He gave his name simply as Nicholas and said 6 words, "I am Diana's son. I am home." He spoke only briefly. "I do not come for titles. I do not want land, nor a throne. I want truth. For her, for myself, for them." He thanked Catherine publicly. "You honored her better than they ever did." He then turned and entered the palace, disappearing into its stone corridors. But the damage had already been done. Across the UK, people rallied. The Queen's portrait in Parliament Square was defaced with "Tell the Truth." Diana's gravesite at Althorpe flooded with candles. Inside the palace, King Charles reportedly refused to meet Nicholas. Camilla remained in Ray Mill, declining all comment. But William did meet him, privately, without cameras or protocol. For nearly 2 hours, the brothers spoke. No details emerged. But later that evening, William released a statement. "My mother's heart held 3 of us. The truth may hurt, but it heals." Harry, in California, responded by phone. "I always felt I had another half. Now I know why." Internationally, responses varied. Canada's Parliament held a moment of silence for Diana. In Australia, petitions surged, demanding an inquiry into royal transparency. In Kenya, where Diana had once spoken about motherhood, thousands gathered in vigil. The monarchy had reached its moment of reckoning, not from war or abdication, but from a mother's buried truth and a son's quiet emergence into light. With Nicholas now acknowledged, the monarchy faced an identity crisis. Was royalty earned by blood or truth? Could legitimacy be rewritten by DNA? And what would it mean for succession, legacy, and the very essence of Britain's symbolic head? These questions swirled as the world turned to Buckingham Palace for the next move. But before policies or titles could be discussed, there was one final step. A man the world had never seen, forgotten by history, was ready to claim his name. The forgotten son steps into the light. On the morning of October 27, 2025, Nicholas stood before the world, not as a prince, not as a rebel, but as Diana's son. The press conference, held at St. James's Hall, was broadcast in 41 countries, reaching over 750 million viewers. Catherine and William stood behind him, solemn but supportive. He opened with a single sentence. "My name is Nicholas Spencer Windsor, and I am not here to divide, I am here to remember." He recounted his childhood, raised abroad under protection, educated privately in Switzerland, his mother's identity withheld until his 18th birthday. "I always knew something didn't fit. My face, my instincts, my pain," he said. He spoke of receiving Diana's final letter on his 30th birthday, revealing everything. She loved all her children, even the one the world couldn't see. His words didn't carry anger. They carried purpose. "I am not the crown. I am the cost of its silence." Nicholas ended with no demand, no claim to inheritance, just a call. Protect the truth, protect the women who speak it, and protect the memory of those they tried to erase. The room stood in silence. Then, applause. Not royal deference, human recognition. Later, William embraced him. "Welcome home, brother." And in a final act, Catherine placed Diana's sapphire brooch in Nicholas's hand, returned from the Geneva auction. "She wanted you to have this," she said. The monarchy was forever changed, but so was history. Diana's voice, long muted, had finally roared back through her children, through courage, confession, and truth. In 2025, Britain met its hidden heir, not with fury but with grace. And the crown, once cracked by silence, began to mend through light. The revelation of Diana's final secret has changed everything. For William, for Catherine, and for the crown itself. As the world reacts, one thing is clear: truth has a cost, and this family is paying it in full. The monarchy will never be the same. But perhaps now, it can finally begin to heal.